If you're still not sure what to do about guns, let me explain it to you using this awful cat. Now before we start, we can all agree that banning cats won't get rid of all cats. And that a majority of people that do own cats are good people. Not every cat is an awful cat. And I happen to love a cute cuddly cat. Ah, look at you. So cute. Such a cute little kitty.
Before I go deeper into this video, let me just make something clear. This whole video is debunked by a simple fact, and it is that the analogy used in this video, the analogy with guns and cats, is faulty. In case you don't know what a faulty analogy is, it is an analogy that looks valid, that looks like an actual analogy, but in the end does not hold up. When you assume that two things are analogous in a certain aspect because they are analogous in others. Now, in this case, the analogy with guns and cats, it is invalid from the point that cats are living, breathing, instinct-driven animals, while a gun is nothing more than an inanimate object that cannot do anything on its own. If you put a gun, unloaded, on a table and you leave it that way without anyone around, nothing will happen. Now if you leave a cat on a table, it may start to wander off, it may get hungry and look for food, it may decide to randomly go explore the road or anything like that, because cats are alive, because they have their natural instincts, while a gun is simply an inanimate object. This, by itself, refutes the very basis of this video, but I want to talk about everything, so let's get into it.
Awful cat! Ah! That was an awful cat, and that is what we're here to talk about. Let's say you're at the movies, or church, or school, when out of nowhere, a cat pops up and claws you in the face.
Except a cat can attack someone on its own, while a gun cannot, while a gun needs someone holding it to actually shoot. But anyway.
Suddenly, you might want to do something about this awful cat. Now, I live on a street that had one awful stray cat. And when no one did anything about it, one cat turned into dozens, and they were all clawing people in the face. And it's all because my neighbor, the crazy cat lady, Mrs. Nra.
Oh, would you look at that? A reference to the NRA. What else could I expect?
Was leaving out giant piles of treats for cats. So you explained to your neighbor that maybe it would be okay to have a couple rules for these cats.
Except there are. I'm not even American, I am Brazilian, and even I know that America does have rules regarding guns. For example, in most American states, a civilian cannot, at least not very easily, own an automatic firearm. This is just one rule of countless others.
Now you would hope that a good neighbor would understand. But she freaks out and yells at you that you're trying to ban all cats. And you're just like, hey, I just don't want to get clawed in the face. I'm not banning anything. And they tell you maybe if you had your own cat, you'd feel better about it. And you say, I do have a cat. It's that cute cuddly one in my window.
Alright, more faulty analogies. If owning a cat was the only way you could protect yourself from mean cats from the road or anywhere else, then you already debunked your own point. Because if you did not have a cat, you would be defenseless. Just like if you don't own a gun and an armed criminal breaks into your house, you are basically defenseless. That is, until the police arrives, and if they manage to arrive before you are murdered by the invader.
That's not the problem. The problem is these... God damn it! So as you can see, we have a cat problem. And all anyone wants is to put some rules in place to stop the excessive amount of awful cats on the street. But instead, I'm looking out my window and see an even bigger, scarier lions, tigers, cheetahs, and AR-15s. That's not the same as a regular cat.
Now the level of ignorance here is mind-blowing, even for a guy like me who's kinda used to deal with such ignorance. If you actually did a research about the difference between rifles and pistols, for example, as I can see you are making a reference to how people want to use rifles instead of tinier, more cute looking pistols, you would actually know that using a pistol requires more skill and training than using a fucking AR-15. Let me give you just one example. I'm studying to be a veterinarian someday, and I'm studying in the Brazilian college called Unip. And one of my teachers, more specifically my biochemistry teacher, is also a police officer. Yeah, I know, it's kinda mind-blowing and cool, but I did not waste the opportunity, and I asked him to teach me some strategies for accurately firing a gun. Just in theory, of course. He obviously would not be allowed to give me a gun in the middle of the college so I could practice on the wall or something like that. And he told me that when you actually pull the trigger, you must pull it slowly in order for the round to be actually shot. But then I questioned him about many videos of soldiers on the battlefield, like American soldiers and Marines in Afghanistan, where they were firing their rifles rapidly, and he told me that the trigger of rifles and shotguns are made to be quote-unquote lighter than those of pistols. So in other words, if you try to rapidly fire with a pistol, the force you need to pull the trigger will mess up with your aim, because you can easily pull the gun more to the right or to the left and you will not have an accurate shot. But with rifles, the fact that you don't need too much strength to actually pull the trigger and fire the round allows you to fire way more rapidly and more easily. This is one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, of why rookies in the American military are not given pistols, but are given rifles, while more experienced soldiers and Marines, such as squad leaders, are given pistols as sidearms for when they need it.
But my crazy cat lady neighbor wants you to think it's okay for everybody to own a cheetah. What? No. Would you stop it, Mrs. Draw? Really?
Well, this part is debunked by the very first thing I said on this video.
And sure, there are people out there with the proper knowledge and training to understand the responsibilities of owning a cheetah.
Except, as I explained, it is actually easier to fire a rifle than to fire a pistol. So for your analogy to not be invalid, to not be fallacious here, it should be easier to own a cheetah than to own a regular house cat. But it's obvious that it isn't. So this is just another faulty analogy.
But when the cheetahs keep ending up in schools clawing kids in the face,
and let's just ignore that many statistics show that school shootings actually happen more frequently in American states with more strict gun laws, like it was the case of Illinois, if I recall correctly.
I don't think the answer is to put more cheetahs in the school.
Once again, debunked by the very first thing I said in this video.
And I don't think the best way to buy a cheetah is to walk into Petco and go, hey, I want a cheetah. Oh, okay, here you go.
In many American states, you actually need to show you trained with rifles and other guns in order to buy them.
And I think we all can agree that it's impossible to get rid of all cats. Which is good, because there's tons of cute, cuddly ones. But let's make some rules that limit and prevent how many awful cats wind up on our street. Less awful cats means less people clawed in the face. Sure, they still might get attacked by a dog or abducted by aliens, but let's handle this one problem at a time. And while this won't solve all cat problems, there's a good chance it'll help with a lot. Like, they had a similar cat problem over on Australia Street, and after they put rules in place, good people still owned good cats, but no one has gotten clawed in the face in over 20 years.
Oh, the classic example of Australia. Now, let's just use this example that is convenient for my gun control bias and agenda, instead of bringing up England, that had very strict gun laws for some time, and it didn't solve a thing, because the criminals just used knives and other melee weapons. Heck, London even had a worse murder rate than New York in April 2018. And let's also not forget that while Australia is not the smallest country in the world, it has a tiny population compared to its territory that is concentrated in the coastal areas. So administration in Australia is way easier than in countries like America that are big and have the population spread all over its territory. Ever wondered why European countries, being as tiny as they are always the best in every aspect? Oh, and let's not forget my country, Brazil. I know, it is underdeveloped, but in this aspect of large territory, spread population, it is way more analogous to America than Australia. And the thing is, after this guy became president, this guy, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, who was also a socialist, leader of Brazil's most notorious leftist party, PT or PT, Workers' Party, Party of the Workers, Partido dos Trabalhadores in Portuguese, and who was also a staunch supporter of Fidel Castro himself. Gun laws became way more strict in Brazil. And what happened? Did crime rates and murder rates go down? No! They skyrocketed to the point of Brazil having more deaths per year than fucking Syria while it was in the middle of a motherfucking civil war. So next time, try not to be biased and do not cherry pick data, okay?
And to all the teenagers on my street that are fed up with that cat lady, I'm really proud of you for being so brave. So I hope that explains to you the problem we're having with guns. Now I have a feeling that the comments on this video are gonna get a little out of hand. If you see that, could you help me out? Direct the conversation back to what laws can we put in place to get less guns in the hands of wrong people?
Except criminals do not obey laws. So it's technically impossible to make laws that prevent criminals from getting guns. And this is why gun control does not work, because it only disarms the honest working citizens, while the criminals, the drug lords, the street gangs get their guns from the deep web, the dark web, or any other illegal sources. This is one of the most common arguments of gun control advocates, but quite frankly, it may be the most ridiculous.
It's important and something we should talk about constructively. How can we stop Mrs. Nra? She's a good lady, she's just a little too into her cats. Maybe we could get her to be interested in a new American pastime, like give everyone on the street free apple pie. There's a rally on March 24th in Washington, D.C., and I would love it if you could attend. I'll have all that information down below. That said, we'll be back to the regularly scheduled videos starting soon.
So, my final conclusions regarding this whole video. The animation is pretty great, I have to admit. The one who made this video is a great animator, but he would be putting this talent to better use if he was using it to make something other than spreading misinformation and preconceived positions. Well, this is everything for now. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any constructive criticism, please comment down below, having in mind that the links to the news I showed are on the description. And I'll see you all on the next video.